Tonight, 50 days that changed the world, how Donald Trump is rewriting the rules. From Kenya to Finland to Greenland, the policies handed down from the White House are changing millions of lives.
How worried are you?
Very worried. Very, very worried.
Please, Mr. President, for the sake of the vulnerable ones, do something and return the funds.
And we speak to the recruits training to repel an invasion from Russia, one they fear could come at any time. Plus, tariffs, market turmoil and job cuts. We'll get the verdict of our correspondents in Beijing, Moscow and Washington. And as Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy arrives in Saudi Arabia ahead of peace talks, we'll assess the impact of the president who's attacked allies and sided with enemies. That's all coming up on The World with me, Gillian Joseph. Good evening. We'll focus on 50 days of Donald Trump's presidency in a moment. But I want to begin tonight with a developing story. That collision between a tanker carrying jet fuel for the US military and a cargo ship transporting highly toxic chemicals. One person is still missing tonight and another has been taken to hospital after the incident off the coast of Hull. 36 crew members from both vessels are reportedly safe and accounted for. Sky's national correspondent Tom Parmenter reports.
The collision sparked explosions and fireballs. It was a low-speed crash with extraordinary impact. The tanker, the Stena Immaculate, had been anchored 12 miles off the coast. It was carrying aviation fuel, which has been spilling into the North Sea.
So Long has collided with tanker Stena Immaculate in the outer anchorage. Both vessels are abandoning.
The first priority was to rescue the crew members and get them back to land.
36 of them were brought safely ashore here at Grimsby. The ambulance service said none of them needed further hospital treatment. But what they're dealing with out at sea is one of the worst maritime collisions in recent British history.
The tanker was carrying aviation fuel on behalf of the US Navy. It was struck by the Solong, a cargo ship which had 15 containers of a toxic compound called sodium cyanide on board. Exposure to it can be serious. It can cause heart or breathing problems and even prove fatal to humans. As the seriousness of the situation emerged, the port authorities stopped all boats leaving the docks along this coastline.
VTS has put a total stop on all sailings. Nobody can get out.
It's very unusual that the shipping's actually ceased. This will cost millions of pounds just in lost revenue for the actual of the ports.
Inside the exclusion zone at sea, lifeboat crews, tugboats and other vessels were all trying to help.
A lot of people watching this would struggle to understand how two big modern vessels can collide like that.
This morning it was dense fog. Ships are on a tight schedule a lot of the time. One ship is answered. All the electronics, what modern ships have, even small boats have a lot of electronics. But somebody's got to be watching the electronics and also looking out the window.
Local leaders here have called on the government to implement a rapid action plan to contain the pollution.
There will need to be some form of clear-up operation. Of course, it's tidal in the Humber, so we have to wait for it to be a high tide to get large vessels back into port. But there will be some really serious concerns about what that will mean for local marine life and the environment more broadly.
Wildlife charities are now waiting to see what impact this has for seabirds, seals and the marine environment. The true impact of this is still not known. Tom Parmenter, Sky News, Grimsby.
Well, as you've been hearing, the Coast Guard received the call about the collision 13 miles off the coast at 9:48 this morning. We know that as the Solong container ship sailed towards the stationary tanker, Both had radar capable of detecting one another 24 miles apart. At 10 miles, the ships should be visible by sight, but there were reports of fog and haze this morning. Investigators are now trying to find out exactly why the collision happened. Well, our chief North of England correspondent Greg Mylan is in Grimsby for us tonight. And Greg, the focus now is obviously finding the missing crew member, but also their concerns about the possible pollution and the likely impact on the environment.
Yeah, and on that crew member, there'd been some confusion during the day about whether all of those on board those two ships had been accounted for. We know that almost all of them had, but the owner of that cargo vessel, the Salong, has confirmed that one member of the 14-member crew is unaccounted for. The 23 who were on the oil tanker have been accounted for. They are safe. They were assessed by medical staff. They didn't need hospital treatment and they were sent on their way. But that search will be continuing. Well, we are now 13 hours on, of course, from when this happened. And those images tell the story of a pretty intense fire and the efforts to bring that fire under control in a pretty extreme situation 10 miles off the coast. But that crew member remains unaccounted for. And yet, and on the environmental picture, that aviation fuel, the jet fuel that is pouring out of the ruptured cargo compartment of that oil tanker, is the focus, of course, of much concern. Also that there was sodium cyanide on the cargo ship as well. That is also a challenge. The Coast Guard has said it has enacted its assessment of whether any counter pollution measures will be needed. That work is ongoing right now. Greenpeace has said that it's too early to say what the impact will be. It will depend on how much of that fuel has got out, where it's gone, and also what the wind and tides do. But there is a real concern in some of the more sensitive wildlife areas on the East Coast that this could be significant, but it will take time to assess the full damage that's done at sea and, of course, on land.
Greg, thank you very much for that update. Well, let's turn now to the presidency that's fast reshaping the world as we know it. That may sound like an exaggeration, but for the rest of the programme, we're going to focus on how those multiple executive orders signed with a flourish in the Oval Office each night are instantly changing people's lives. Donald Trump's supporters say he is the disruptor-in-chief who is putting America and Americans first. But for millions around the world, from Africa to Europe, he promises only uncertainty and danger. Sky's international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, travelled thousands of miles to hear some of their stories.
In just 50 days, Donald Trump has upended our world.
You're gambling with World War III. It's Gaza. It's a war-torn area. We're going to take it. We need Greenland one way or the other. We're going to get it.
To some, the disruptor-in-chief will bring peace and prosperity by putting America first.
Donald Trump is a very intelligent man.
To others, he threatens chaos and destruction.
I think he's an idiot.
Well, he's quite unpredictable.
And that makes you worry about your own security?
Yeah, my own and everybody else's.
For decades, we've taken it for granted America has our back. We can't anymore.
USAID, run by radical lunatics.
Please, Mr. President, do something.
We're leaving the headlines behind, travelling to places where Donald Trump's already had a huge impact on countless numbers of lives, changing our world after only 50 days in office.
We've come to Kenya, where a decision made thousands of miles away in Washington is threatening some of the world's most vulnerable people.
We're driving through one of Nairobi's poorest neighbourhoods, a place where thousands of people have depended on American aid for years. Now President Trump has turned off that tap almost completely. We've come to investigate what impact that is having on people's lives here and what it means for their future.
We're joining health workers on their rounds. This place is desperately poor. People live down sewage-infested alleys, in small, cramped buildings and tiny one-room homes.
This house is very small. Enter one by one. This is a problem. The child has no weight.
First on the rounds is Anne, a single young mother who's HIV positive. Anne is totally dependent on medicine and food that was supplied by US aid. But now all that is in doubt. She's also waiting for test results to see if she's passed on the virus to her baby. And is terrified for the future.
zinaweza enda hivyo ziishe, na unajua hizo ndio vitu tunategemea. So zile the medicine was inanipa at least ndame ni nguvu na protection. Sasa hakuna unaona, so protector wa mwili yangu hayuko, so anything can just pass through me. Yeah.
We had no warning. It was so sudden.
How worried are you?
Very worried. Very, very worried. My worst fear is that we are going to lose children under the age of 5, especially those breastfeeding from positive mother, because of this cat. And it is going to be worse.
How many children do you think?
Over 20,000 children across several counties that are covered by our organization.
In the area you cover, your area, your charity, you think 20,000 children are at risk?
Yes.
It's the same story wherever we go. In another one-room home, we find Irene, who's also HIV positive, with 3 children, all with different health problems of their own.
Jesse is how old?
Tomorrow is turning 2.
He's 2 tomorrow. Happiness, how old are you?
8.
8. And Joseph, how old are you?
6.
6.
She is also beside herself with fear for the future, but has this message for the American president.
Please, Mr. President, for the sake of the vulnerable ones, and for the sake of the young little children like this one, please do something and return the funds for us.
USAID gave Kenya around $850 million a year. Around the world, it provided 40% of all developmental aid. The Trump administration has ended 90% of its aid contracts with immediate effect. The decision's being fought over in the US courts, but its impact is already being felt across Africa.
So we've flown about 45 minutes west of Nairobi to a place called Kisumu. It's a much more rural area, so different kinds of problems. But we're being told that the American aid cut is having just as drastic an impact here as in Nairobi.
We go to a hospital on the edge of town. These places were hubs for USAID to dispense their medicine. We're shown the hospital's storerooms.
So this is for treatment for people who are HIV positive?
Yeah.
With no deliveries since the cut, Joseph, the pharmacist, tells us they've got just 2 months of supplies left for some drugs, less than a month for others. Fear, he says, is rising among the patients.
They keep on asking, what is going to happen after this?
So they're stockpiling the drugs?
Yeah, they're trying to pile the drugs.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Because they're worried they can't get more?
Yeah, pick it anywhere they can get more, then pile them in their homes so that they can use it for the longest time possible.
Not all Kenyans, though, see Donald Trump in the same light.
Donald Trump is actually quite popular in Kenya amongst many because of his conservative politics on gender and trans issues, for instance. We're going to church now to see what Christians make of his aid cuts here.
For evangelical Christians, Donald Trump has been viewed as a hero, fighting for their values.
I'm a medical practitioner. We either have males or females. And so I agree with him because from the point of creation, that is what I understand.
But they are all worried by the aid cuts. Peter told us Africa is too dependent on aid, but Trump was wrong to cut it so suddenly.
He wants to make America great again. I don't know, because we see America as great, but maybe he has to make it greater. If that is what he wants to do for the country, it is okay, it is good. A country should benefit its people. Yeah, but in the long run, a country should also extend an olive branch to others.
Donald Trump is a very intelligent man.
Today, their bishop is telling the faithful to pray that Donald Trump reverses his decision on aid.
His name is Jesus. His name is Jesus.
There is a sense of bewilderment. The US president has taken such drastic action against some of the world's poorest people. But also, it may not be good for America either. Back in Nairobi, we're going on safari. Not to look at the animals, but to see what America's rivals have been up to in Africa.
America and China have been battling for power and influence across Africa. America using aid, education, healthcare and promoting democracy. The Chinese doing this, building massive infrastructure projects like this $14 billion railway line from Nairobi to the coast right through this national park. Now, by shutting down its aid programs, America is effectively deserting that battlefield, leaving a vacuum for the Chinese to fill. From here, that feels less like America first and more like America in retreat.
On a Chinese-built airport expressway, we're heading out of Nairobi now to leave Kenya, on the way back to Europe, going somewhere else, also facing an uncertain future in these fast-changing times, but for very different reasons.
We're on our way to the edge of the free world. We're in one of NATO's newest member countries, Finland, and we're driving towards its border with Russia.
So the Russians are just over there in those blue buildings?
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
We're joining Finland's border guard. The border was closed with Russia because of the war in Ukraine. There are tensions with people in the area reporting sightings of drones. Recruits are training to repel a border intrusion with live fire. There's been a surge in people joining up because of the situation.
For the defense of our own country. Most of us, I think, are here because of that. We have 1,300 and something kilometers border with Russia, and it's pretty long. We have to have good men there.
To defend it?
Yeah.
And what do you think about the situation with Russia?
I don't know. The country that you cannot trust anymore.
When you watch the news, what do you think?
I think it's crazy. When you turn your TV on today, you can't know never what is really happening.
What's that make you feel about the world?
Pretty nervous, but I really trust our leaders then. It's all about the trust.
Finland has historic reasons not to trust Russia and is now even more on its guard.
Stand by.
And it's not just the military. More and more civilians are also training to handle guns. Hundreds of new shooting ranges opening up since the start of the war to meet rising demand.
The situation in Ukraine, people are noticing that, well, we maybe need to be ready to take care of ourselves. And when you know how to handle arms, it makes you feel that you are doing your own part to prepare.
Are people worried about the situation, do you think?
More or less. Some are more, some are less. But I think that it's generally, people start to think about it.
Were you surprised when you heard that Trump's decided to suspend all aid to Ukraine?
Well, I think it's a part of his making his point.
Does it worry you, or...?
Yeah, a lot.
Donald Trump worries you?
Yeah.
What in particular?
Well, he's quite unpredictable.
And that makes you worry about your own security?
Yeah, my own and everybody else's.
But if it did come to a situation where things got more dangerous, you would be prepared for it?
Yeah. Bring it on.
Putin, Trump, Ukraine. Finns are watching events unfold warily.
It is the shadow of an old enemy looming across this border that is focusing minds here and right across Europe, but also massive doubts about an old friend. Under Donald Trump, the US is not just withdrawing from Europe, it looks like it might be switching sides, deserting the West entirely, cutting off aid for Ukraine, attacking allies with tariffs, and talking about taking over its neighbours.
So what's it like to live somewhere Donald Trump says he wants for America? We went to Greenland to find out.
We need Greenland for national security and even international security.
So we've arrived in Greenland just a few days after Donald Trump repeated his ambition to take it for America, something he says is going to happen one way or another. That's been condemned by the government here as unacceptable, but we're here to see what the people of Greenland make of him.
The appeal of the place is obvious when you get here. Stunning natural beauty, mineral wealth and access to the Arctic as climate change melts the ice. but it's not up for sale.
I got 2 death threats.
Jürgen Bosen is rare among Greenlanders, welcoming Trump's attentions.
When people say that they're not happy with you, what do they say to you, though?
Oh, traitor. You're selling our country. You're fascist.
He admits he's paid by groups in America, but says with Trump, Greenland has a better future.
Europe is failing. Britain, Sweden, Belgium, Holland, even Germany. And I think he's a great man who wants to have a peace in the world.
Are you popular here for what you're doing for Greenland? A lot of people don't seem to like the idea of joining America under Donald Trump.
I don't care, because they will realize I'm doing the good thing for Greenland.
But it's hard to find anyone else who agrees.
We're part of the Denmark, you know. I don't want him to take Greenland.
I think he's an idiot. It's not a good idea. No, we're our own country. And we would rather be with Denmark than with USA. Trump. Yes.
I think it's ridiculous that he thinks that he can just take our land.
Does it worry you then when he says he wants to take Greenland?
A little bit, mostly because we don't have the resources to fight against USA.
Wherever we've gone on this journey, the world has been in shock. America used to believe that helping others was good for America, whether that was keeping the peace in Europe, protecting the sovereignty of neighbours, or saving lives. The fear is under President Trump, it is just out for itself.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this, I tell you.
Whether or not that is good for America at home, from what we've witnessed abroad, it is risking millions of lives, the security of allies, and America's own standing in the world, potentially strengthening its enemies, all in the name of putting America first.
Well, that special report from Dominic Waghorn there. Well, we'll be speaking to him a little later in the programme. Before that, let's remind you of all that's happened in the past 50 days. President Trump has been speaking to Vladimir Putin, paving the way for US-Russia talks last month. That's in contrast to his public spat with Ukraine's President Zelenskyy, which led to a freeze in military aid and intelligence sharing. That's been another wake-up call for Europe, already under pressure to better defend itself. Mr. Trump provoked shock and anger when he suggested the US take over Gaza, resettle Palestinians and turn the Strip into a Middle East Riviera. He also says he's committed to taking control of Greenland, has ordered that maps be changed to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, and sparked a trade war with Mexico, Canada and China. He's also threatening reciprocal tariffs on all other US trading partners next month. President Trump's long-touted migration crackdown sent detainees to Guantanamo Bay, and military flights have been used to facilitate large-scale deportations. And then there's the new Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, run by billionaire Elon Musk. DOGE has cut thousands of government jobs, including all diversity, equity and inclusion roles. And it's taken a chainsaw to America's foreign aid agency, USAID, cutting 83% of programmes. A long list of policy changes achieved in just over 6 weeks' time. Let's cross live to the White House. Shortly we'll be speaking to our US correspondent Mark Stone. We'll also speak to Asia correspondent Nicole Johnston in Beijing. But first to our Moscow correspondent, Ivor Bennett. And Ivor, one of the biggest shifts has been a seemingly closer relationship with Russia at the expense of Ukraine, as we've seen it.
Yeah, that's right. Look, we knew that the return of Donald Trump would shift the dynamic regarding Ukraine, regarding Russia, but I don't think anyone expected things to shift just this much and how quickly it's happened, because in the last 50 days, Donald Trump has taken the US from being Ukraine's main ally to essentially posing an existential threat by siding, or appearing to side at least, with the enemy, with Russia, as he pushes for this peace deal. It all started with this phone call with Vladimir Putin. That was 4 weeks ago now, but since then there has been non-stop one-way traffic in Moscow's favour. And it's worth just recapping some of the main developments, because there have been so many. So we've got Russia and the US now talking face-to-face, talking about a reset of relations, the potential lifting of sanctions, and potentially readmitting Russia to the G7. All of that was unheard of under Biden. We've got Washington already appearing to agree to Russia's red lines before peace talks have properly begun, saying that NATO membership for Ukraine and the return of lost territory would be unrealistic outcomes of peace talks. We've got Donald Trump echoing the Kremlin's lines, accusing Zelenskyy of being a dictator and falsely blaming Ukraine for starting the war. Most damaging of all, though, we've had this freezing of US military support and intelligence sharing for Ukraine, so essentially blindfolding Kiev as they try to repel Russian attacks, which have continued unabated, of course. So it's really quite remarkable just how much has swung in Moscow's favour without, by the way, Russia really doing very much at all. What they have done, though, it seems, is say the right things, because ever since Donald Trump was elected in November, Moscow has been full of praise for him, full of admiration, full of respect, and full of flattery. And that appears to have gone a long, long way.
To Nicole in Beijing next. Nicole, we're now in the middle of a tit-for-tat trade war between the US and China, aren't we?
That's right. Trump opened it up with 10% tariffs on China. A month later, he doubled it. Now, China has hit back. They started with limited, targeted tariffs, oil, gas and coal, and restrictions on critical minerals exports to the United States. But they have since then made it far stronger, their tariffs. They're targeting US agricultural and food products, showing that they know how to hit the United States exactly where it hurts. So that will start to have an impact. I mean, clearly from the perspective of the Chinese, they have been through all of this before. They want to show to the United States that it has serious levers to pull. And even their language and their rhetoric has become far stronger as well. I mean, China has said that if the US wants a trade war, a tariff war, or any other type of war, that they will fight till the end. So really strong language coming out of China. They've also trying to indicate that as chaotic and unpredictable as the United States is, China wants to show that it is a stable, dependable partner to countries in the global south.
And Mark, how are those tariffs having an impact where you are?
A huge impact. Look, I think, 50 days in, it is a point to stop and reflect and just take in the enormity of what this White House has done over the course of, as you say, just 6 weeks. Absolutely extraordinary, unprecedented, era-shifting policy changes that have taken place, that have come out of this White House. Something unusual happened today, Gillian, for I think the second weekday in only the second weekday in the past 6 weeks, we haven't seen Donald Trump. He is here. I know he's here because we can see there's a Marine on the door of the West Wing, but we've not seen him, which is very, very unusual. We didn't see him last Wednesday. That was the day after his joint address to Congress, a late night, and so perhaps you could forgive him for not being on the television the next day. But he likes to be on the TV. He likes to keep himself front and centre, and he hasn't done today. And I wonder whether that might be because of what we have seen with the markets. You are asked about tariffs. They are having a very destabilising effect. His flip-flopping on tariffs, on for Canada, Mexico, and then off, and then on again, and then off. I mean, it is very, very confusing, and markets don't like uncertainty. So, they're quite staggering in terms of what's happened today. The Dow Jones has dropped 2.08%. The S&P 500 has shed 2.7%, touching its lowest point since September at one point. And the Nasdaq falling 4%, its worst session since September 2022. So really not doing very well at the markets. Donald Trump always says that he keeps an eye on the markets. He certainly goes on about them when they're up. He doesn't when they're down. We haven't seen him at all today. And at the weekend, just yesterday, he was asked by Fox News News whether he predicts a recession. His answer was fascinating. I hate to predict things like that. Then he went on to say there is a period of transition because what we are doing is very, very big. And Scott Bessent, his Treasury Secretary, was asked today about the market movement, and he said it is just a natural adjustment. I think they're nervous in the White House. They're not talking about it, but certainly the stock markets are nervous, and the sense I get is that increasingly perhaps people are watching what's happening, watching this flip-flopping, and they're wondering what the motivation behind it all is.
Mark, thank you. Mark, Nicole and Ivor, thank you all. Well, do stay with us because coming up we'll focus on the next round of talks between the US and Ukraine. President Zelenskyy is in Saudi Arabia looking to get relations back on track.
Over there, to your left. There have been airstrikes every day. Hezbollah are very sensitive about us showing any pictures, and we're being hurried away right now.
It felt akin to riding into some sort of Armageddon.
Many other areas have been hit badly. There are shells coming in every few minutes. Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armory. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. It's trying to hit us. That's it. It got us then. There's a lot of action going on. A lot of hits still.
We were the first journalists and the only outsiders to reach the site of the attack several weeks after it happened.
We found from the missile.
It's very difficult to see what around here could be conceived of as a legitimate military target. Only about half a mile from the Turkish coast, a boat seriously overcrowded. This is one of the most severe viruses in the world. Clearly not had very much to eat at all, a lot of them extremely thin and very frail. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
The world's largest falls now down to a trickle in places.
I can't imagine how much plastic is lying at the bottom of this huge lake. Whoa!
Getting up close and personal with a rhino.
This is what makes the job so fantastic.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club.
4 more years!
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News. We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Welcome back. Ukraine's president has arrived in Saudi Arabia, where he'll have his best chance to get relations with the US back on track after his White House spat with President Trump. At stake is the military aid currently frozen and hopes for progress on peace. From Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, here's our international correspondent, Alex Rossi.
The stakes for Ukraine could not be higher as President Zelenskyy arrived in Saudi Arabia. His meetings are a prelude to negotiations between Ukrainian and American officials to mend the relationship. President Zelenskyy will not be part of the talks. The US will be represented by Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He says it's important Ukraine is prepared to do difficult things. The talks are taking place here in the port city of Jeddah. Saudi Arabia is emerging as a major power player. It's seen by both the United States and Russia as a neutral venue, and much is riding on these negotiations. The ambition from the delegations is that by the time they conclude, they hope that they will at least have the shape of what a ceasefire deal will look like.
Your country's in big trouble.
Can I answer? But there is a lot of work to do before that. Remember this?
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, a diplomatic spat to end all diplomatic spats in the Oval Office, which left US-Ukrainian relations in tatters. And in Ukraine, the consequences of the breakdown have been catastrophic. An uptick in Russian attacks after Washington cut off weapons shipments and intelligence sharing.
We want to do anything we can to get Ukraine to be serious about getting something done. You know, I say they don't have the cards. Nobody really has the cards. Russia doesn't have the cards. They don't have. What you have to do is you have to make a deal, and you have to stop the killing.
But the Russian position is far from clear. The Kremlin saying its objectives remain the same. It keeps all the territory, and Ukraine is demilitarized.
An awful lot of the evidence, including the language about this is Ukraine's fault they started the war, which is demonstrably a lie, that kind of thing does not suggest to me brilliant deal-making. That suggests to me that America has sadly begun to take sides with Vladimir Putin rather than with the democratic elected government in Ukraine.
This meeting in Jeddah will be watched closely by the Russians. But if Ukraine's position is weakened further, there may be no incentive for the Kremlin to make compromises and end its war. Alex Rossi, Sky News, Saudi Arabia.
This is The World with me, Gillian Joseph. Next up, I'll get the view from Russia's doorstep, and I'll be joined by Lithuania's foreign minister.
Sky News get the full story first.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. It's really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
Welcome back. Donald Trump's falling out with Ukraine and warmer overtures to Russia have created anxiety in Lithuania, Estonia and Latvia. The Baltic states on NATO's far eastern flank are now trying to strike a balance between Europe and the US. Well, with me tonight is Lithuania's Foreign Minister, Kęstutis Budrys, who's in the studio with us tonight. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
When you were first appointed towards the end of last year, in December, the first country that you visited was Ukraine. What does that tell us about your concern regarding the war and what's happening and your partners, the other Baltic states?
Actually, we were the first country that went to Ukraine with whole the cabinet, except one minister. So there were 14 of us traveling straight after the appointment to Kyiv to show our commitment to support Ukraine. And as we say, it as long as it takes to get to the victory, and then also commitment to continue with the size of our support. That's more than 1% of GDP per year for 10 years. That's a long-term support. And of course, to show that we are not only in solidarity, but we are very much interested and existentially in the outcome of this war. And we are supporting Ukraine's efforts to get the just and long-lasting peace. And Lithuania is all into this.
Are you worried that if Ukraine loses this war, that the Baltic states are also under threat?
It's not only about Baltic states. Outcomes will be not only European-wide, that will be global-wide. And we all understand that everyone is watching now whether aggressor, because we have to start from the very beginning. It's not just a conflict. That's the war of aggression, and aggressor is Russia, Ukraine is victim that is defending. So everyone is watching how it will end up. And if aggressor will be rewarded for their crimes, or the crimes of aggression, first of all, so there will be repeated aggression. And be it the Russia's neighbors from Russia, or be it any other aggressor elsewhere, be it in Asia, or be it in the South, global South, or elsewhere. So that's why we say that it's critically important for us this time to end up with the victim protected, and for the long term protected with the security guarantees, and the aggressor being punished for what crimes he did, and all the ones that were involved into the decision making. Accountability is critical here, and we have to use all the instruments that we have now as the leverage against the aggressor to stop this war. And I cannot understand why we are putting so much pressure now on Ukraine, where we have all the leverage against, but not on aggressor, not on Russia. If Putin decides tomorrow to stop the war is stopped. And we have the peace if we have the guarantees in place. So this time I think we have to return to the very parameters, return to the definitions, and who is doing what here.
When you see the changing relationship between the United States and Russia, and we see that horrific spat in the White House between Zelenskyy and Trump, do you believe that the United States is still an ally? Can they be trusted?
Of course, we rely on US with the NATO, we rely on US what concerns our security cooperation, and I see it as the task and as, yes, a bit of challenge, but for us also to work through diplomatic means and convince our American friends that we have to adjust a bit and put the pressure on Russia. Because we have the instruments, sanctions, frozen assets, and the other things. And we see that there are some changes already. And we have to continue in that direction. That's why we believe from Lithuania that European and American and Ukrainian efforts aligned can provide the result.
But does it worry you when Donald Trump says that he's not on Ukraine's side or Russia's side, he's in the middle?
We see that it is also evolving, this position. We see that it's already taking more time than someone thought from the beginning than within the new U.S. administration. So it takes time. Now we must show where the problem is and where the roots of this war is, and that's our job and that's our task, to work with the Americans and to show the precedents also and to show the outcomes of it, because it's within the U.S. interest to have the long-lasting peace and to have the NATO as the functioning organization and continue to be for the next also generation. That's what's our interest.
You've clearly said tonight that Russia is the aggressor, but the United States are not saying that. Donald Trump is not saying that.
But it's obvious. And the United Nations said that within the General Assembly. And that's what we are saying. And we say that accountability is very important here for it not to be repeated. So the parameters hasn't changed. And it's obvious. Because if we won't stop aggression, but if we will only stop this situation, it means that it will be repeated. And then, when we look at the Baltic states, yes, we are one of the targets, obviously. And if we are targeted, then we are talking about the other European and other nations and also US being part of the larger conflict that we want to avoid. How to avoid it? Just and lasting peace in Ukraine.
Foreign Minister, thank you very much for speaking to us tonight.
Thank you.
Do stay with us. Lots more coming up. Top of the world and top of President Trump's planned acquisitions. We're live to Greenland.
I want to start the programme today with a name, a story that I can't get out of my head. The campaign has now started. This is your chance. Tell people this is the Politics Hub. It's not correct. The tax burden is projected to go up.
No, I am talking about
no, but I'm not. This is my interview. Look, this is ridiculous. No one does care about us. I'm really interested in that. On the Politics Hub, we like to push the boundaries. He's got the majority. The question is, what is he going to do with it?
Mayhem in the Middle East, rippling in America's West.
Get back! Get back!
The resolve of these protesters is now being seriously tested. I saw police being forced or pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
None of this is a peaceful protest.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. How are you feeling?
I am angry. It is an anti-woman agenda.
Sky News, get the full story first. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support, but it's nasty out there.
Can you beat Donald Trump, Governor? President Biden, do you trust President Xi? President Biden says that this meeting went well. He said real progress was made on a whole host of issues. Will your candidates win?
I hope so. I think they will. I think they're great candidates.
There's no doubt that Kamala Harris and her team are harnessing the power of social media. Do you think Kamala is brat?
Kamala's brat.
Are you scared?
Yeah, we were scared. It was terrible. Strong wind, building tearing down.
As them say, our God works, so we can't do nothing.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. Free, wherever you get your news.
Excited.
I've had severe nightmares of these people coming in and just taking me in the middle of the night.
Ghislaine Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges against her. Mum, how are you feeling today?
Jeffrey said, you answer to Ghislaine, you just don't cross her.
It has been a chaotic and at times contentious start to Trump 2.0. The president has shaken the foundations of America's system of government, sent shudders through Europe and caused turmoil in the markets.
President-elect of the United States, the Honorable Donald John Trump.
That I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
The greatest comeback in political history complete.
I was saved by God to make America great again.
Millions have put their trust in you. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now.
The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities.
They went inside for private talks, and then came the news conference and this.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it.
This is the first time a sitting president has been at the Super Bowl ever.
I'll be dealing with President Putin largely on the phone. We expect that he'll come here, and I'll go there.
We'll make mistakes, but we'll act quickly to correct any mistakes.
This is clearly a long way from Washington, D.C., but it's in places like this that the true extent of Elon Musk's move fast and break things approach is being felt.
I make around $40,000 a year. Like, why me? Why am I the fat?
A dictator without elections. Zelenskyy better move fast, or he's not going to have a country. Did I say that? I can't believe I said that. Next question.
This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy.
I have no idea what he's saying, but that is the most elegant, beautiful language. Go ahead, please.
Donald Trump is still talking the language of real estate, of building property.
Being here, and we put together a great cabinet. You're unhappy with it. If you are, we'll throw them out of here.
Asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
It is. That's quite a signature, isn't it? Beautiful. He's a beautiful man.
A moment of such profound consequence.
You don't have the cards right now. You're gambling with World War III.
In this entire meeting, have you said thank you?
Your country's in big trouble.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
America is back. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Well, to mark the 50th day of Donald Trump's second presidency, our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, is live in Greenland for us this evening. And Dominic, we saw the far-reaching consequences of Donald Trump's policies in your report with you crisscrossing the globe. What do you believe, or where do you believe America's place is in the world right now?
Well, I think the countries that we've been to, and those are countries from Africa to Finland to here in Greenland, so from Africa to the Arctic, you have to say that America's position has been weakened because America was always seen as a country that believed that helping others, that fighting disease in Africa, for instance, promoting democracy and freedom in the developing world, or guaranteeing security in Europe, helping others was good for others, but also good for America. And the way allies and friends now see America is very much a country that is out for itself and doesn't believe in that anymore. And what we're seeing in Africa was effectively America. We will see America deserting the soft power battlefield. That's going to have two main consequences. It could lead to possibly millions of people dying unless that huge amount of aid that was thrown at the developing world by America is replaced or resumed. But it's also going to lead to a vacuum that America's rivals like China and Russia are very eager to fill. It's hard to see how any of that is good for America. In Europe, we saw in Finland a similar sense that the Finns feel deserted potentially by this old ally who for decades has guaranteed security in Europe, and that has left them wary and uncertain for the future. That can't be good for America either.
And Dominic, you're in Greenland tonight, one place that knows all too well what it's like to be in Donald Trump's sight. From your report, we gauge a little bit about what people think about being taken over by America.
Yeah, I think the sense we get in Greenland is what is going to replace that American foreign policy, which was much more altruistic and much more philanthropic. And what we're seeing instead is a more predatory, transactional American foreign policy, where we are seeing an American president literally trying to acquire his neighbours. And it's a test here in Greenland as to where that is going to go. And I think what we're seeing from the Greenland people is they don't like it at all. They just see it as more colonialism that they've seen from Denmark. It's going to be crucial, I think, very telling as to how they react to it in the election coming up, that Donald Trump is trying to influence but is more likely, I think, to see Greenland opting more for independence than going in the direction of being taken over by America under Donald Trump.
OK, Dominic, thank you. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. 50 days in and more than 1,400 days left in Donald Trump's presidency. As ever, we'll bring you all the twists and turns as they occur. News at 10 is up next with Anna Botti. Do stay tuned.